Well, there is another 9/11 story getting a lot of attention today. Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman decided to mark the occasion yesterday with a New York Times blog entry called "The Years of Shame." In it, he writes, quote, "The atrocity should have been a unifying event, but instead it became a wedge issue. Fake heroes like Bernie Kerik, Rudy Giuliani, and yes, George W. Bush raced to cash in on the horror. And then the attack was used to justify an unrelated war the neocons wanted to fight for all the wrong reasons." He goes on, quote, "The memory of 9/11 has been irrevocably poisoned. It has become an occasion for shame." Brad Blakeman is a former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush, and Medea Benjamin is a co-founder of Code Pink. Thank you both very much for coming on today. Brad, let me start with you. Now some are calling for the New York Times to suspend or fire Paul Krugman for not only what he said, but for choosing to do it on the 10-year mark since 9/11. What say you?
He should be fired. He's a coward. He's a hack. The fact is that he doesn't speak for 9/11 victims. I served President George W. Bush on 9/11 in the years in the aftermath. I lost a nephew on that day, a first responder who was killed saving people. He certainly doesn't speak for me. 9/11 is not a phony event for me. I served in government. Where was Paul Krugman? What the hell did he ever do? Except spew hate without any basis of fact. Even opinion is based on fact. I saw what President George W. Bush did for this country. I knew what he was doing. I was there. I observed it. I also saw what Rudy Giuliani did, as all Americans did. He was a mayor at the time, not just for America, but for New York City when they needed him the most. Paul Krugman has absolutely no regard for any members who suffered that day. And again, I say he's a coward and a coward because he would not allow, Megyn, readers to comment on his article, quote unquote, for obvious reasons. He should be fired.
Medea, who is Paul Krugman to pronounce for the world that 9/11 is, quote, a day of shame, an occasion for shame?
Well, I think Paul Krugman is right. 9/11 was used to justify two unjust wars that has led to the death of over 6,000 of our soldiers and hundreds of thousands of innocent Iraqis and Afghan civilians.
That's an absolute lie.
It's been used to bloat the Pentagon budget that has only fattened the coffers of defense contractors but has tanked our economy. And it's been used as an excuse to condone torture and indefinite detention, which has sullied the reputation of the United States worldwide. And that is a shame.
I'm going to get back to Brad in 1 second, but let me just say, so Medea, the invasion of Afghanistan, bombing al-Qaeda, that was not justified by 9/11.
It's justified to go after individuals who attacked us and al-Qaeda, but not to start an indiscriminate bombing campaign in Afghanistan that has led to the death of more civilians than were killed on 9/11.
Okay, let me get Brad to respond.
Look, our actions against those who seek to do us harm and did us harm were absolutely legitimate. Absolutely legitimate in Afghanistan. And let me say this.
You
trying to somehow justify 9/11 for our invasion of Iraq is absolutely erroneous. We went into Iraq separate and distinct from the acts of 9/11 and the Taliban. You know that. You use it as a talking point to try and drag in an unrelated event. You know it's not true, yet you and Krugman and others use that as an attempt to degrade the memory and the loss of 9/11, and it's shameful.
You know, Medea, let me ask you this.
Let me just ask you this,
administration. Let me ask you this. I'm going to give you the floor.
I must respond to that.
I will. I'm going to give you the floor, but let me just tee up the next question. Let me tee up the next question, then you'll be your chance, I promise. I want to ask you, obviously, I know your feelings about President Bush, given that you founded Code Pink.
War criminal. He should be behind bars.
We've been there, right? We've heard you. We've had you on many times. Let me ask you about the attack on Rudy Giuliani, who as Brad points out, many people considered America's mayor after 9/11 and really admired the way he brought not just the city together, but the country together with his calmness and the way he led through the tragedy that was unfolding before his eyes. Do you agree with Paul Krugman that he is a, quote, fake hero?
Yes, he profited off of 9/11. He used 9/11 as the reason for a failed presidential campaign in which all he could talk about was 9/11, and he has continued to profit from that personally. And I think the American people saw through it and wanted a leader who is actually going to use 9/11 to bring people together, and that was not Rudy Giuliani.
All right, Brad clearly wants to respond, and he will get the chance to do that. Panel, if you would, please stand by. We're going to carry this over to the other side of this break. We'll be right back.